and time. There's two key components that I believe really define our industry, and what I love about them is they're really human. The first is trust, and I think trust is established right here for a barista through the interaction and experience that we can have during a coffee service. But I think in order for this service to truly be special, as I really desire it to be, that trust needs to come long before this moment in a relationship with a coffee producer, a roaster, an importer, or ultimately anybody who adds their passion and defines this moment right now. Now, that actually leads me to the second key component, and that's the story. So sharing the story of all these passionate people that come before me in defining this experience today. Now, in front of you, there's a book. If you'll please flip to the very first page of that book. This one's for you. You'll find the table of contents, and this is going to act as a roadmap for our journey together through this story. So, please review that for just a moment, and then flip to the next page. You'll see the producer on the left-hand side. This is where our story will begin.
All right, so Cole has started off with very simple instructions, having them read a book and explaining the basics of his concept and getting the judges acquainted with what he's doing, it sounds like.
So to land far, far away from here, there lives a coffee producer. His name's Felipe. Felipe hasn't always been a coffee producer. At one point in his career, he was actually trading commodity coffee. And he had a really souring business experience, which led him to the goal of changing the world's perspective on coffee. Now, he returned home, and he put together a trusted and passionate team of coffee professionals to work on this mission with. And one of the first things they did when they returned to start their farm was they actually went around to neighboring producers, and they shared with them value and insight with the goal of pushing the entire community forward. Now, what's amazing is those producers today receive on average 5 times the commodity price of coffee. So Felipe and his team have helped build a more sustainable community surrounding themselves, pushing them all forward as a collective, and ultimately garnering their trust. Now, when I heard this story, I was fascinated. As a barista, a green coffee buyer, and a business owner myself, I feel that a lot of Felipe and his team's values align directly with myself and my team. So I'm really proud to be standing in front of you today, sharing our stories and weaving them together on this world stage. You'll see on the right-hand side a photo of myself and my team. Some great caricatures. Now, I've been in the industry for nearly a decade. My name's Cole Torode. I'm here representing the amazing nation of Canada. And what I've come to learn during my time in this industry is that it is far more than just the sensory experience that I can tailor in the cup, but by sharing the story of the passionate people who make this possible, I can really elevate the experience altogether. And I can ultimately have a lot more fun doing that. Now, I'm going to share with you 2 varieties from Felipe and his team. If you'll flip to the next page, you'll see those there, and I'll walk you through them as I extract this first set of shots. So please just follow along. On the left-hand side, you'll see geisha. Now, geisha is the first expression of Felipe and his team's coffees that I ever got to experience. These seeds come from Panama, and the flavor profile of this particular lot is elegant, with complex acidity, and a velvety mouthfeel. On the right-hand side, you'll see Sidra. Sidra is a cross of red Bourbon and Típica, and these seeds have come from Ecuador. The flavor profile of this lot is crisp, with luscious sweetness, and a creamy mouthfeel. Now, both of these coffees have undergone an anaerobic style of fermentation, which I think for a coffee producer requires a lot of trust, because it's not exactly the norm in our industry to do this, but Felipe and his team have been doing so since 2014. So they've had lots of time to experiment and to figure out the nuances of the anaerobic fermentation technique. Now, I'm going to deliver these espressos to you. Please evaluate the crema for now. Don't taste just yet. The story is going to improve as this coffee cools down a little bit. There you are. There you are. And for you, good sir. There you go. So that anaerobic technique happens in a container kind of like this. The cherries get loaded in, water gets filled, and they push out all of the oxygen, just like that. And what they've come to learn in their time of doing this style of fermentation is they can actually completely change and manipulate the acidity, which makes for some really amazing flavors in that cup. So at a cool and controlled temperature for nearly 2 days, these coffees have brought a whole bunch of lactic acids into their composition. And this has defined tropical fruit tones in the cup and an amazing mouthfeel and texture. Now, ultimately, both of these coffees are a fantastic expression of the story that specialty coffee can share when passion is poured in at the farm level. But today, in front of you, judges, you have a passionate barista who wanted to be a part of this story as well. So I wanted to add my own chapter, and with the trust of Felipe and his team behind me, I've blended these two coffees together to create a whole new sensory experience completely tailored for you. So if you'll flip to the next page of your book, you'll see what I've done for those espresso shots directly in front of you. There's 16 grams of the geisha mixed in with 6 grams of Cidra, with the idea of keeping the elegance and the complex acidity of the geisha as the forward flavors in this espresso. Those will come through in the first sip as passion fruit and orange blossom. With the Cidra, I'm enhancing the weight. So that's going to be medium to high, and it's going to push a flavor of sweet pineapple through. Then on the second sip, you'll get this beautiful note of cocoa nib, which I found only came through by blending these coffees together. The texture is going to be silky, it's going to be coating on the palate, and the finish is going to be medium, and a lot of that cocoa nib will come through there. Please, if you'll stir 5 times with the spoons in front of you, you can drop them in the marbled glasses that are empty just by the side. And enjoy that first chapter of our story.
Put your hands together for the espresso course.
So Cole has been telling us a lot about his coffee, a lot about what he's doing, definitely a ton about the processing of the coffee, how they've worked at the farm at La Palma, you know, all of the anaerobic pre-fermentation, lactic acid production that they tend to do out there, as well as a very nice description of the flavors and where they come from with the blend of the 2 varieties.
I think the blend is a really interesting concept because it's something we often move away from, especially. We want to focus on a single origin, a single variety story. Here we've got a single farm with a blend that's been created intentionally not to hide anything, but to make a better espresso with clear characteristics of each of those coffees and to better represent Felipe's work.
And we have many years don't see, so the competitor use blend on the sport stage, so it's very good.
It was interesting. Cole came to me with the idea of the blend, and at first I was quite shocked that he wanted to do it. But then we started tasting it, and it grew on me more and more. And as time went on,
judges, for the next chapter of our story, I'll get you to flip the page one more time. I'm going to share with you a whole new blend, which is going to redefine the flavors that will come through in our milk beverage. So I've changed the composition of geisha and Cidra in order to promote more intensity of sweetness in this particular course. There's now 18 grams of Cidra and 4 grams of geisha to push that intense sweetness found from the Cidra through this milk. So that will come through as a really fun flavor of Neapolitan ice cream. So a little bit of strawberry, a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of vanilla. And then on the back end, there's going to be a beautiful note of marzipan, nice and sweet. This marzipan was a continuous note that I found in this particular milk beverage, and I've come to learn that that's because of the lactic acid created in that anaerobic fermentation technique, binding with the lactose in the milk, creating this beautiful, sweet flavor. I'm going to start with you. Please stir 5 times, just like you did for the espresso, and enjoy that. Now the milk today, I've sourced from here in Amsterdam, from a little producer called Momet. And I've freeze distilled this milk with the idea of promoting the intensity of sweetness. There's a diagram on the bottom left-hand side of your page. There you are, enjoy, to showcase how freeze distillation works. So I'm removing some of the water content, and in doing so, concentrating the sweetness of the sugars. The ratio I'm using for this course is 20 grams of espresso and about 65 grams of this sweet, freeze-distilled milk. There you are, my friend. And once again, that's Neapolitan ice cream and marzipan. Last but not least, you are very welcome.
So you'll have heard earlier that we're joined by the coach for Canada, which is David Crosby. His brothers also. How petrified were you by tasting the milk when you got here?
Okay, a round of applause for the milk beverage.
The milk here is absolutely delicious. So we went to a local coffee shop, got to try a few. On day one, we had too many options, and then after day one, we narrowed it down, and then we went with this milk.
You guys are welcome to keep going. I'll tell you when.
My brother likes to talk a lot.
Did you, so he's using the freeze distillation, kind of like the national champ Ben Putt did last year, from Canada. Did you guys find...
Right, I'm ready for it.
Did you guys find any...
So, the last course, I'm going to share with you what I think
later,
is the ultimate expression of trust within our industry. And to do that, I just have Cidra in this cup. It's been sitting on ice. I've used 22 grams of Cidra, and I've extracted them to 55-gram yield in the cup. I'm going to do a few things to promote clarity within this beverage, because I believe without clarity, we don't ultimately have trust as humans. So, I've chilled, I've aerated, I'm going to roll this around, and I'm going to pour all of this through 2 stages of metal filtration to space out the flavor compounds and remove some of the suspended solids, making this a crystal clear expression of Cidra. Now, the reason I chose Cidra for this course is because as of a month ago, myself and my team had never worked with this coffee variety. But because of a long-standing relationship with Felipe and his team, I get to stand in front of you today sharing this coffee with you. I'm really proud of that. So, here I have crystal clear Cidra. I'm going to add 2 ingredients to this. The first, an anaerobic fermentation that I created to mimic the technique that Felipe and his team are doing on the farm, creating brand new complex acidity and amazing flavors in the cup. So, in here are the 4 ingredients directly in front of me. Closest to you is cinchona bark. Cinchona bark is a natural source of quinic acid, and I've used 30 grams of that in this container. I've paired that with 3 different zests of citrus. So there's lemon, lime, and orange to bring complex acidity into this concoction. Then 30 grams of raw white sugar and 1 full cup of water in order to enable fermentation and to allow this to beautifully mimic the techniques they're doing on the farm. I left this in my refrigerator for 2 full days at a cool and controlled temperature of 5 degrees Celsius. And I'm adding 10 grams to this drink to bring new life to the acidity and to show that I trust in this anaerobic technique that Felipe and his team utilize. Now I have 1 more ingredient I'm going to add. It's just sitting over here. It's 300 grams of raw white sugar with 200 grams of almond milk. And I've chosen almond milk as an ingredient for this syrup today because that was that recurring note that I found in the milk drink, which, as if you'll remember, is because of the lactic acids binding with the lactose in the milk. So 10 grams of this are going in to balance out this beverage. The notes in this drink are juicy mandarin orange. You'll get milk chocolate, pineapple, and complex florals like rose and jasmine. The acidity will get you right in the first portion of the sip. The sweetness will follow, and then there will be a lovely bitterness sitting on your tongue as you evaluate. And as I place this in front of you, I'm going to ask that you flip the page 1 more time before you consume this beverage. There in that bottle is 1 last ingredient that I'd really like to round out our story today. So it's Palo Santo essential oil. Palo Santo is a wood from Colombia, just like this coffee, and I'm going to ask that you pour it into the silver tins here. This is going to create an aromatic sensation using the dry ice, and this will paint the setting of La Palma y el Tucán, an amazing coffee farm that has produced this coffee where this story has come from. So please, go ahead. You have all the tasting notes and all the farm information right on the left-hand side of that page. And for a unique experience today, I thought I'd give you the sunset as you evaluate this particular course, looking over from La Palma y el Tucán. Judges, thank you so much for being a part of this story, for giving me the pleasure of standing in front of you, and for trusting me as a barista. That'll be my time.